Today, we're diving into something you might not have considered before, the idea that none of us truly favors democracy as much as we think we do. That might sound strange, but hear me out. Most of us, when it comes down to it, want what we want, and we often don't care how many others share our opinion. Democracy is about majority rule, but we all want to be part of the majority, or at least get our way. So, in reality, we're not always that thrilled with the idea of compromise. At the same time, we're heavily influenced by the consensus around us. People tend to align themselves with what they perceive as the majority opinion. It's human nature to want to fit in and be on the winning side. This creates an interesting dynamic where most people are somewhere in the middle. They don't necessarily care about the numbers, but are deeply influenced by social pressures. Nothing happens in isolation. Our opinions, actions, and choices are heavily influenced by social dynamics, historical contexts, and the threat of being socially ostracized. No one wants to be the outlier, especially in a society where standing against the tide can come with significant consequences. In today's political landscape, particularly in the US, we see this play out in real time. Whether you support Trump or Harris, most people believe that at most one of these figures represents good, while the other is the bad guy. Some may even think one of them is just a puppet for larger forces at play, but the point is clear. We have a binary system that forces us into divisive camps. Here's the bigger question. Can we, as a divided nation, find a way to compromise and remain united? Or are we headed towards deeper divisions and perhaps even conflict? Right now, the US is a patchwork of ideologies, cultures, and histories, and as much as we talk about unity, many of us don't really want it. We find comfort in our tribes and would rather strengthen those smaller groups than fight for unity with people we disagree with. But what does unity even look like in such a diverse country? We're not just multicultural anymore. We're multilingual, multi-ethnic, and even divided on geographical issues like where borders should be. Some people still debate whether parts of the US should belong to Mexico or whether certain states should secede. These are real movements, not just fringe ideas, and they speak to a deeper truth. The natural order of things tends to lean towards division, not unity. Historically speaking, civilizations don't tend to get more unified over time. Instead, they become more specialized, more divided based on geography, economy, and culture. This is just the way things go. So when we talk about unity today, we're fighting against a historical trend. As much as we want to believe in the ideals of the Enlightenment, free speech, individual rights, and democracy, these concepts often clash with the reality of our human nature, which gravitates towards division. Even those who champion free speech today, whether they identify as liberals or conservatives, are actually advocating for old-school liberalism, the kind of liberalism that emphasizes freedom of thought and expression. This brings us to a core tension in contemporary society. Is our pursuit of individuality undermining our ability to form stable, unified civilizations? Here's another layer to the problem. As technology advances, we're told that decentralization is the future. Cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology are hailed as solutions to centralized power structures. But if we rely on these increasingly complex systems, which fewer and fewer people truly understand, are we not becoming more centralized in a different way? If only a small group of people can maintain or understand these systems, how decentralized can it really be? The idea of a decentralized world is a compelling narrative. But in practice, we might be moving towards even greater centralization under the guise of decentralization. This raises serious questions about our future. Are we heading towards a world where everything is interconnected through treaty organizations and alliances, making global conflicts inevitable? The rise of global alliances, like NATO and other treaty organizations, creates an illusion of security. Smaller countries align with larger ones for protection. And soon we have a globally interconnected system where any conflict can escalate into a worldwide issue. We're seeing this play out today in places like Ukraine, Gaza, and Israel. Whether we like it or not, We are involved in these conflicts because of our global alliances, and the ripple effects are felt across the world. The question is, does this make us better off? Are we creating a world where the very alliances meant to protect us are pushing us closer to global conflict? For many people, especially those who are more focused on their daily lives, these larger issues aren't on their radar. They trust the media to tell them what's happening, and often align with whatever opinion is being presented as the correct one. In a sense, these individuals, the so-called normies, don't have to worry about figuring out what's really going on because they've already outsourced that responsibility to the system. This isn't necessarily a criticism, it's a reality of modern life. With so much information bombarding us every day, it's easy to let someone else do the thinking for us. But this creates a dangerous dynamic where people believe they're supporting the little guy by parroting the narratives of the powerful. Americans have a long history of rebellion, particularly against what they perceive as tyranny. The country was founded on principles of independence, free speech, and individual rights. This rebellious spirit is still alive today, but it's often misdirected. Instead of fighting for the core values that made America strong, we're caught up in superficial divisions. To make America great again, truly great, we need to return to those foundational principles. This doesn't mean dismantling the country or fundamentally transforming it. It means revitalizing the spirit of independence, free speech, and free enterprise that made the U.S. what it is. We often look to leaders to solve our problems, but the truth is, it's up to all of us to make America great again. One person can't do it alone. Yes, leadership matters, and policies that strengthen the economy, secure the borders, and promote energy independence are important. But the real work happens on the ground, with ordinary people making everyday decisions that contribute to the country's greatness. It's easy to get caught up in the idea of a savior figure, whether that's Trump, Biden, or someone else. But we need to be careful not to idolize any one person. True greatness comes from the collective effort of the people, not from one individual leader. Here's where it gets tricky. How do we bridge the gap between deeply divided factions? It starts with empathy. We have to be willing to see the good in the people we disagree with. It's easy to demonize your political opponents, but if you spend enough time with someone, you'll find that there's always something positive to say about them. Empathy doesn't mean pacifism. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything someone says. But it does mean recognizing their humanity, understanding their perspective, and finding common ground where possible. Take someone like Kamala Harris. She's often ridiculed for her speaking style, but think about the pressure she's under. She wasn't even planning to run for president, yet here she is in one of the most scrutinized positions in the world. Whether you like her or not, you can empathize with the challenge she faces. The same goes for Trump. He's charismatic, a master at working a crowd, and undeniably savvy when it comes to media. You don't have to like him to acknowledge these qualities. Life is one big long-form interaction. If we can approach each interaction with empathy and a willingness to understand, we'll find that unity isn't as far-fetched as it seems. Division may be the default, but unity is possible if we're willing to work for it. In conclusion, the path forward requires all of us to take a step back, challenge our biases, and open ourselves up to new perspectives. It's about realizing that, despite our differences, we're all in this together. Thank you for watching. This has been Fool Me Twice. See you next time.